Hello everyone, my name is Young Falcon, and today we're going to be taking a look at the most interesting roguelike slash dungeon crawling slash dating simulator I've ever played, Boyfriend Dungeon. This game is available on PC, Xbox, and Xbox Game Pass, and of course the PS4 and Nintendo Switch for the MSRP of $20. Let's see if Boyfriend Dungeon lives up to the roguelike dating sim hype, or is it a game you should skip, or maybe wait for a sell or something of that nature. So the plot setup is pretty simple. You play as your MC who arrives in Verona Beach, somewhere in California, I'm guessing, and your cousin picks you up and says, "Hey fam, I'm leasing this apartment out to you, but you need to find some love in your life. Me and your mom agreed to this. You need to get on that grind." So it's up to you to kind of look around town and find someone you can fall in love with. You got a couple of companions to choose from as you explore this area called the Dungeon, where you have to face on your fears and take out monsters while also stumbling across various blades who are eventually the romanceable characters you find throughout the game. There's about 7 or so blades in the game that you can romance and give them gifts and talk with them and make the right dialogue decisions so they fall in love with you, yada yada yada. Y'all know how these dating simulators work, but this time we got a little bit of a roguelike dungeon twist with crafting and various other movesets and stuff you can unlock throughout the course of the game, which is, you know, pretty cool, I guess. Yeah, the story is pretty standard, right? There's nothing too crazy that goes on in terms of plot twist or anything. I know I've seen controversy with one particular character, but I'm telling you, it is the most overblown thing I've ever seen. The twist you could see coming from a mile away. It's not even handled the best, and a lot of the stuff that happened was just kind of a dull moment, basically. I just wish it was executed a little bit better in terms of the wrap up and the ending. I kind of also wish some other things we'll get to in the cons of the game, but overall, it's bog standard. You're not really here for the overarching plot. You're here for the individual plots with each characters or your dateable blade. So let's talk a little bit about that. Overall, my favorites had to come down to Isaac, Valerie, and of course my boy Seven, who I actually ended up using the most throughout runs, and he definitely became my favorite and hit the max love rank and all that jazz. Mainly because the man's combat was clean. I mean, the story was okay, but the man's combat was absolutely clean. When it came to the other characters, like Isaac, for example, and Valerie, like, yeah, they had their moments, but Isaac's plot was a little dry, a little basic, right? It's kind of the been here, done that. And then when it came to Valerie, I mean, she was a whole thotty in her past. I could not handle that, all right, my fellas. I'm not into that type of relationship, you feel me? Same with Sunder. So they got a couple of characters in here that just didn't really gel well for me. You know, Sawyer had to go. There's a couple characters like that I'm not a fan of, but for the most part, you know, the characters I did like, I mean, I really liked them, so, you know, that's cool or whatever. So yeah, overall, I thought this game was pretty okay, everything considered. I really like the fact that they bake in a lot of the diegetic UI into the gameplay, so you're constantly pulling your phone out, and when you get text, you can send messages back and forth and, you know, set up dates and things of that nature that way, which is, you know, admittedly pretty cool. I like the crafting elements they tried to squeeze in there, just to craft gifts and stuff, even if they are a one-time use thing, so you can't spam the overpowered gifts to certain characters, and they can just, you know, keep building that love rank up. You gotta still look around and search for those things within the dungeons. Oh, of course, the art style is just, you know, stand out. Everything feels good on the front end. That is the overall story, running around the town, grabbing gifts, etc. Like, that stuff is fine. Where I have problems with Boyfriend Dungeon lies in the quote-unquote roguelike nature of its gameplay. Like, yes, it's a roguelike, don't get it twisted, I'm not going to shame it or anything, it's just not nearly as fleshed out of a roguelike as I would like it to be, and you could definitely tell that it feels like it's just not all there in terms of its gameplay. We'll kind of talk about that a little bit right now. So, basically, my biggest gripe with this game is the bare bones roguelike aspects of it. All you spend your time doing in these dungeons is fighting enemies, walking into special areas to find new crafting parts, essentially, and these crafting parts can range from anything from hats, which can give you perks, which, okay, kind of cool, to you finding just crafting materials in general, to you finding a Zine, which is your magic abilities, or finally you finding outfits, just brand new outfits and gifts you can give to, you know, yourself or give to, you know, your boyfriends and stuff. It's pretty bare bones, and I kid you not, that's as random as we get. There are a couple of locations you can find where you can, you know, sit down and have a quick little date. Like, you go to an ice cream parlor and you can, you know, share a bit of ice cream, but these dialogue instances instances are not really randomly generated or anything. Like, you just sit down, you go through the same canned lines of dialogue no matter the level, and you get a bit of support up, and you kind of just find yourself mashing through it after the first or 2 times of seeing a cute little interaction. It's incredibly lame. The stuff that they have for the roguelike elements are extremely lacking. It's laughable, honestly. Like, I don't get how we hype up the roguelike element right down to the title being boyfriend dungeon, right? And the dungeons are the worst part of the game, like, without a doubt. Fighting enemies and taking them on, now that we're on combat, is a slog. These guys are the easiest things I've ever fought in my life, especially when you reach a certain point. And it wouldn't have been as hard, and I wouldn't have died as many times if there weren't so many stupid knowledge/rule checks, like, 1, having to fight the Nintendo Switch frame rate. If there's too many enemies on screen, your game just starts chugging, which leads to a lot of unwarranted deaths. 2, the extremely clunky combat and buttons just being unresponsive, so you're pressing roll and your character just kind of stands there, or parries or whatever's, and you can't get it out. Like, stuff like that isn't fun. And 3, finally, the enemy types are just very generic and boring. I mean, there's nothing crazy or cool about them. They're just kind of the standard millennial weirdo enemy types that we've seen in games like Going Under, but without the charm of a game like, well, Going Under. Stuff like that is not fun, right? I was not a fan. I just wasn't a fan of a lot of the combat stuff. It's clunky. It feels very repetitive at a certain point, and I just found myself turning on the take 50% less damage or whatever just to make my runs a lot more fun and enjoyable to go through. Even when I turned the shield off towards the middle of the game, it was still an absolute breeze. I was still running through enemies and one-shotting enemies at points and just dismantling them. Like, it was so free. There's a point where I finally, you know, beat the final dungeon. I conquered my fear, and then I got soft locked from the game, which was extremely infuriating. So I had to go back and do it again. I finally beat the dungeon again, right? And you know, again, flawless run, you know, no deaths, and I leave to go take on the final boss, and the game stops me from doing so because I'm not at max level with a certain blade or any blades yet, which is really dumb. Like, the fact that I had to grind again and go through the same dungeons over and over and over and over and over and over and try to trigger a gift sequence, and I couldn't because of how poorly laid out the dating simulator / dungeon aspects are, was the most tilting experience of all time. And yes, if you're wondering, I didn't die on those runs either. I either purposely killed myself so we could get to the final boss, or I ran through an elevator. The amount of grind you have to do to reach the end of this game was inexcusable. The second was the gameplay is the most clunky, repetitive, like, boring thing I've ran through. Your character movement is sluggish and slow. Your rolling doesn't feel like you're even going anywhere, let alone does it feel like you have any iframes. Like, it's just, there's so much I don't like. I didn't even mention the Zion's abilities, you know, the fact that you could summon bugs or summon turrets or throw fireballs and stuff. Like, they even mentioned that because there's no need. You barely use it. There's no need to use it. Your core weapon damage is so busted and overpowered that you're gonna run through the enemies regardless, especially doubly so if you were like me and got the Valkyrie helmet or something like that, and you get double damage throughout the game. Like, these guys just melt. Literally, here's footage of me bodying a second boss with the helmet on. Do you guys see what I'm talking about? This isn't okay. Like, this is stuff that's baked into the core gameplay. And yes, if you're wondering if you craft different hats, like, oh, maybe I'll get something new, I can't wait to see what the random element's gonna be. No, it's not random. Sometimes hats literally repeat the same perks. I cannot make this up, bro. This game is not even supposed... You should even call it a roguelike. It's not. The gameplay portion of Boyfriend Dungeon's combat is laughably bad. Like, it is so poor, which is surprising considering the company's history. I know they've worked on better roguelikes with much more in-depth stuff, so I don't know what happened here. I feel like Boyfriend Dungeon definitely was rushed when it comes to the core gameplay aspect, at least the dungeon crawling stuff. It just feels unfinished. Like, I feel like I'm playing an early access title, but when it comes down to everything else, like the characters and the core dating sim stuff, like, it's fine. Like, that stuff is okay. If they were to make a sequel, which it seems like they might set up for, please, by all means, either cut out the roguelike elements completely or rework them entirely. Give us some new things. Maybe borrow a little bit from that boon system from Hades. Give us more or actual perks for runs like, you know, Binding of Isaac or Risk of Rain or something. I want to be able to do something really cool and unique with the gameplay. Maybe a speed boost after I get a massage, or maybe you get double attack after you drink alcohol or whatever. Like, stuff like that would go a long way in making those runs a lot more enjoyable than the bare bones boring slog that we got for Boyfriend Dungeon 1. I don't know how I would rework it. I don't know all the things that I would do. It's just a couple suggestions, but the core gameplay of this game really took me out the experience, and the plot twist that everyone was whining about on Twitter, you guys just need to relax. It wasn't that big of a deal. The character isn't even that like crazy well written or anything, bro. Like, y'all need to chill. But anyways, yeah, overall, the core game for Boyfriend Dungeon, you know, it was all right. I like 7. That's good enough for me. I thought he was, you know, cool or whatever. The storylines, you know, they did their thing. The music was all right. But in terms of the core combat and stuff, I mean, y'all got to step it up over here. There's too many banger roguelikes out. Returnal just dropped. You know, we got gosh darn Gunfire Reborn coming out this month, or actually, sorry, this year. There's too much stuff going on for you guys to be playing around like this. Anyways, that's my review of Boyfriend Dungeon. That's going to do it for me. If you guys want to see anything, please like, comment, and subscribe down below if there's any other games you want to see me cover. We got some other things in the pipeline. I have a huge video essay coming out very, very soon, and I hope you guys stay tuned for that. Anyways, that's my little video. I'll see you guys later. Peace. Make sure you guys have a good one.